So Simon, hi, this is Mary Ann. I made it.
Awesome. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. I'm glad it finally worked. I think we're just waiting on Doug, and then we can get
I'm here.
going. Oh, Doug, you're here. Okay, perfect.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah, that link worked.
Awesome. In that case, we can get going, and I'll share the agenda. Wait.
Hey. And Eileen, I think you're still in charge. You want to kick us off here? Oh, can't hear you. Oh, still can't hear you. Oh, don't worry. With you need to switch devices or something. Okay, give her 1 minute. There's always got to be something here, to kick off every meeting. So
Test.
I hear you, Daria.
Oh, okay. Great. I am here. Apologies for being late.
Oh, no worries. Like I said, we're still working out some technical kinks here.
When you switch from one virtual platform to another virtual platform, it changes all your settings and you have to figure out which microphone you're using.
Okay. Eileen, you there? I still can't hear you if you are. Oh, I heard something soft.
Can you hear me?
It's very faint.
Oh, better than nothing, I guess.
Can you get the microphone a little closer, perhaps?
That help if I'm moving?
That's still pretty quiet.
I do not understand. I hate Microsoft.
Okay. I can see you and we can hear you. It's a little quiet, but I think we can make that work.
Well, why don't we just go ahead and get started and
Oh.
everybody can introduce themselves.
Okay. Sounds good. So board members, why don't we just run through our board members real quick, since we do have some returning faces here. So Eileen, you want to go first?
Eileen Cody, on the tab for about welcome.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, that was a little choppy, but we caught some of that. Hung, you want to go next?
Hey, good morning. Hung Chung, board member.
Great. Let's see, Doug.
Hi, Doug Barthold, board member.
Great. Marianne. Oh, you're on mute.
Mary Ann Lindablad, returning board member.
Great, thank you so much. And then Greg, I think had some sort of I think he's sick or not feeling well today, so he pinged us this morning. He won't be in. So, and then I'm Mike Neuenschwander, the director for the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. And then we have some of our team members on here as well today. Simon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, everyone, I'm Simon Borman. I'm the policy analyst on the EDAB team.
Great. Ryan?
Good morning. I'm Ryan Pistoresi. I'm the Assistant Chief Pharmacy Officer here at Healthcare Authority.
Great. Jingping?
Hi, I'm Jinping Xing. I'm the Cost and Quality Analytics Manager in the HCA.
Great. Sumaya?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sumaya Sabi. I am the Data Analytics and Research Manager here in Cost and Quality Analytics team.
Great. Arshina?
Good morning, Arshina Hussain. I'm the Drug Price Transparency Data Analyst.
Okay, great. And I think Kelly Wu, who's also one of our data analysts, was on, but is just restarting her computer, so she should be back here shortly. Great. So I'll take us in here to our next spot with the PDAB Director's Report. A number of exciting things going on around the country. So I'll give some brief updates of what's happening in other states. Then I'll give a little bit of a kind of timeline of how I'm seeing things here going for the next 6 to 7 months. And then we'll chat a little bit about some of the next year's meeting dates that we have tentatively on the schedule. So probably first and most exciting is Colorado, as per usual. They always have a lot of stuff going on, it seems, and they're I don't know, maybe a year and a half kind of ahead of the curve of where most other states are. So I guess first thing they do have a newer director. She's not new, but from a few months back, Sophie Thomas, who joined their team. And then most recently, they set an upper payment limit for Enbrel going into effect in 2027. The upper payment limit is approximately $31,000 per year, I believe, and it was determined based on the Medicare maximum fair price that manufacturer negotiated at the federal level. So they, as most of you probably know, they previously had a lawsuit after their first drug review on Enbrel, and that was dismissed as it was ruled that they didn't have standing and there weren't damages. Now Amgen has refiled that lawsuit under some of the things that they're claiming in the lawsuit is violates the Constitution's Supremacy Clause, Commerce Clause, due process protections of the 14th Amendment, and conflicts with federal patent authority, and that the PDAB's decisions lacked meaningful standards, making it arbitrary. And there's a really great article in the Colorado Sun explaining all of this. So I if you want to kind of get more in depth and detail on that, just Google Colorado Sun, Colorado PDAB, and you'll probably find that at the top of the Google search. So I believe the first hearings for that will be in January. And other drugs that Colorado has conducted reviews are Genvoya. They deemed it affordable. Stelara was deemed unaffordable and eligible for a UPL. Cosentyx was deemed unaffordable and eligible for a UPL, and Trikafta was deemed affordable. So that's Colorado right there. Going on to the next state here, we have Oregon, just to the south of us, and they do have a brand new director. I think she started just a couple of weeks ago, named Sarah Young. And so they're in the process of conducting affordability reviews on 23 different products. And so in January 2026, I believe the board will vote to narrow down this list of reviewed drugs for the spring that Oregon will present to their legislature. I believe 9 drugs and 1 insulin product, I think is their goal to present to that. And those reviews, because of the amount, I believe, are probably not as in-depth as like the Colorado reviews. They're a little bit shorter, higher level reviews. Maryland, over on the East Coast, is presenting some affordability reviews on Ozempic and Trulicity, or I think they presented on November 17th. And so the board, their board is discussing some potential paths to implement the UPL. And I think they've done some drug reviews on 2 other drugs and have info requests out for 2 more. And I think they're also looking at like the Medicare maximum fair price as a reference price for their UPLs. And then finally, Minnesota just hired a brand new PDAB director, Vernon Rowan, and so they're in the kind of very early stages of where we were at about 2 years ago of just trying to start up their PDAB program from the ground up. So that's kind of what some of the other states are doing. So yeah, everyone's more or less in the process of drug reviews like we are, and then starting to look towards upper payment limits. So any questions from the board on any of those updates? And I don't have tons of like in-depth specifics of the hows and whys of exactly how that all happened in the other states, but what we do keep in contact with them regularly. So, I have general, updates on what's going on there. Okay. Great. So let's see, next part for director's report, just kind of looking at our timeline here. And so board members, I know in our one-on-ones, we've kind of chatted a little bit about where we are, where we're headed. So this fall here has really been our data collection time. We selected our drugs in July, worked on trying to refine and hone the forms there at the end of summer, sent out data requests as well. And so then we started getting some information back. So some of our deadlines that we had in terms of getting information back were for the PBMs were, I believe, October 16th, payers were September 30th. And then we do have manufacturers who both requested extensions. So we will be looking for data from them in middle of December and January. And we have also been in contact with them regularly as well for questions that they've had, is trying to clarify what does this mean, or how do we fill out these forms. So we have been having some meetings with them as well, trying to work to complete those requests. And then also just internally, we've been pulling the data we have access to from like APCD to help fill out our portions of the report for what we can see. And so with all of that, also working to finalize, just going through some internal processes for the surveys as well to get those approved so we can put those out. So the goal is planning to skip our January meeting, as we're still be kind of collecting data from the manufacturers, but then have our first versions or drafts of the drug reviews ready for March, and reviewing them in May as well. So other things that we're looking on doing throughout the winter is also because Colorado and Maryland have been working on their upper payment limit policies and working to implement those. We'll be looking at those as well, so we can also begin discussing, our own upper payment limit initial methodologies in the spring and work on those throughout the summer. Come June 30th, we will also work on updating our drug list with a new list of eligible drugs. And then as we're finishing up our drug reviews in the spring, able to start transitioning back to selecting some new drugs for July once that drug list comes out. And then upper payment limits can begin starting in January 2027. So that's kind of the general gist of finishing up our data collection here in the winter, doing our drug reviews in the spring, new list of drugs, and selecting new drugs next summer. So and then in terms of just board meetings that we have coming up, again, I mentioned we're going to be canceling the January one, but we have March 18th for next year, March 20th, July, or not March 20th, March 18th, May 20th, July 15th, September 16th, and November 18th. So we're just trying to plan those ahead a little bit to get those on our calendars, make sure we do reservations for the room. So board members, if you have any specific conflicts with any of those, tell us and we can work to make any tweaks or adjustments sooner rather than later. So, so in terms of a director's report, I think that's where we are at. So any other questions from the board on any of that? Okay. Wonderful. So then oh, Daria.
Sorry, just flagging, you probably already know, but just to make sure, those dates do conflict with the Oregon PDAB meeting. So stakeholders that are engaging with both multi-state PDABs do have difficulty when they conflict.
Okay. Yeah, well, we try and deconflict where possible, but yeah, there's enough PDABs around the country and other meetings. It does get a little hard to fit everyone's calendar. So okay, but yeah, where possible, we'll try and take a look at that. Okay, let's see. So now we can go to, now that Mary Ann's back, I think we had some discussions in terms of, I know Eileen was the vice chair and had taken over chair duties while Mary Ann was acting with the HCA. So I think we were going to discuss reorganizing our chairmanship again back to the way it was. So Eileen, you want to take that over?
Hopefully, and good time to be able to handle. But we do need to take a vote.
I can't hear anything. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's cutting out like every other word.
It's just really faint.
About it. And when somebody make a motion just so we pass this on to Mary.
Okay. Great. I think she was saying somebody make a motion so we can motion for Mary Ann to resume the chairmanship. We can have Eileen as vice chair and then we can vote on that. Is that correct? Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, then, all in favor? Aye.
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 Mary Ann, take over.
I'm back. and thank you. I really want to express appreciation to Eileen to step in while I was at HCA for those 8 months. And it's nice to be back. So I'm looking forward to working with y'all again.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming back, Mary Ann. It's actually fits in really well because you already know what's going on, so
Yep.
there's not a steep learning curve. So yeah, we really appreciate you coming back.
Thank you, Mike. So time to take over. So I guess we're ready for the next. I put my glasses on here. So Kelly.
Well, and I think
Or did you have something
Ryan.
else, Mike, you wanted to raise?
Yeah, I think Ryan Pistoresi has a conflict here later at the end of the meeting.
Oh.
So if we could bump his up first before Kelly's,
Sure.
and then we can resume the agenda as normal.
Okay, and then go back to Kelly. Okay, great. So
Yep.
Ryan, thank you.
Great. All right, so for this one, this is related to how we were aggregating drugs on the eligible drug list. So as you recall, one of the first steps that we did in looking at what drugs would be eligible for the affordability reviews is we presented the different dashboards and the different data around the different drugs. Since we did that, there were some, thank you. Since we did that, there had been some discussions around different ideas on how the drugs may be grouped together and how that may change some of the different data metrics on the, on the different dashboards that we have. So for here, the background is that, again, we need to put together the list of drugs that would be eligible for a affordability review. With the one approach that we did this year was that we aggregated the drugs by the ingredient and by the labeler. But as I mentioned, there had been some discussion and thoughts around a second approach here at the bottom of the slide, which would be to compile the list solely by the drug ingredient, which would include multiple manufacturers rather than by individual manufacturers. So the purpose of this presentation and this discussion today is just to highlight this alternative approach and see if this is a direction that we should move in for future years of developing the eligible drug list. So the current drug list is done by the ingredient and the labeler. So that means that if there are multiple manufacturers making the same drug, so you can think about this as a brand name drug and a generic of that, or a reference biologic and a biosimilar, or even two different generic manufacturers or two different, biosimilar manufacturers, those would be separated because they are made by a different manufacturer. So in doing it this way, we were able to really separate out the different manufacturers because each manufacturer sets their own price, and that may impact whether drugs are eligible for the list or not. As you know, brand name drugs have certain criteria, biologics have a different criteria, and generic drugs have a third criteria. So if we are thinking about how we approached it this year, we can take a drug ingredient drug alpha. And if drug alpha was made by 3 different manufacturers, manufacturer A, manufacturer B, and manufacturer C, they would each have their own, individual drug products. And so the way that you would have seen that on the drug dashboard is that you would have seen the individual product 1, product 2, and product 3 rather than the aggregated drug ingredient alpha. So this could make the overall cost and overall utilization of that entire drug ingredient alpha less than some of the others because its costs and utilization is broken out by 3 different items. You can think about this if they were compared to a drug ingredient beta who only had 1 manufacturer and 1 product. This drug beta may seem more than the alpha products because the alpha products, again, are split up between these 3 different manufacturers. And if this is getting confusing, please stop and let me know, since I know that these are a lot of different names for the different types of drugs, manufacturers, and ingredients, but trying to help illustrate it, kind of through this example on this slide. Okay, so on the next slide goes into this visual example. And so this is just a theoretical example of looking at what was presented in the upper table versus, kind of what is actually happening with that drug ingredient there at the bottom. And you can see that the drug total from the top matches exactly with that drug ingredient. So you get the same type of information, but it's not split out between kind of these 3 different drug products. Okay, so there is a proposal that for the next year, when we are developing this drug list, that we do it at a separate point. So in the development of the list, we'll continue to look at the individual ingredients and labelers because that is necessary for us to determine whether they meet the statutory criteria in 7405030. So continuing to make sure that we are looking at brand products a specific way, biologics a specific way, biosimilars, and generics their own way. But once we have that list with all of the different ingredients and products at the manufacturer level, would be to aggregate it to be at a drug ingredient level. So if there were multiple manufacturers whose products met the criteria, they would now be grouped into one item together rather than how they were presented this year where they were separate. And so this would change how the information is presented to the board, but we want to see what the board's you know, willingness to go forward with this new approach, and whether you liked it in its original format where it was at the labeler level, or if you would want to aggregate it more at the drug ingredient level.
So I'm happy to.
And then, oh, yeah,
Or
I
you
just
want
want to see
our-
if there's one more
Sure, yeah.
slide. I think it just might be the question slide. Yep, questions. Okay, so Doug, it's yours.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of summarize my feelings on this. I'm in favor of the switch. Ryan, that was a great summary. Thank you. As you noted, it's necessary to have it at the ingredient labeler level when we are determining eligibility for the list, eligibility for affordability review. But then when we're determining among the eligible products which we want to do the affordability review on, I think it's important that we aggregate to the ingredient level. And the reason I think that's the case is because we don't it if a single ingredient has multiple manufacturers, like in the example you gave there, if it has three, and so those costs get split out between three manufacturers, and the number of users gets split out between the three manufacturers, that doesn't make it less unaffordable. Let's just assume that it's unaffordable. That doesn't make it less unaffordable to the people of Washington. If 5,000 people use the version from manufacturer A and 5,000 use the manufacturer B and another 5,000 use manufacturer C, there's 15,000 users of this ingredient. And I think that, to me, when we're determining which drugs we want to do an affordability review for, it's the 15,000 users of that ingredient. That's what matters to me in making that decision. So that's kind of why I think this is a good idea. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what others think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe Ryan, can you kind of give just a quick like pros and cons of the two, what we're doing versus what the switch would mean?
Yeah, so the pros for the current state are that you are able to see a bit more granular detail around the different types of manufacturers that may be um, having a different level of impact than some of the other manufacturers. And so the way that yeah, so if we were to continue this, and if we had an example in which the same drug by two different manufacturers, you would be able to see that detail a little easier on the dashboard. Whereas the con for the current way is exactly what Doug said, is that you're not getting the actual impact of that drug because it may be spread among different manufacturers, and you may select a drug that has a lower overall impact than that kind of drug ingredient um, for that affordability review. And the pros are pretty much the opposite of that. I mean, if we were to go forward with this proposal, you would see some of these more impactful drugs, but it could be that it's because this drug is made by several manufacturers. And if you're interested in just a single drug by a single manufacturer, it may not be as high on the list. So it's really just a method of how the same type of information, I mean, it's going to be the same underlying information. It's just how is this displayed for the board when doing the considerations for which drugs to select for the affordability review.
And so with this new approach, if we select an ingredient, we would in effect, basically have to do a drug review on multiple manufacturers if it was spread across multiple manufacturers. Correct, Ryan? Like we do.
Yes, I mean this. If we were to do it in that way, then yes. But I don't think that there's anything that would have prohibited us from doing that this year. It's just that since the statute around selecting the drugs for affordability review is really kind of at that ingredient level, rather than what we were doing is, the ingredient manufacturer level, because that's how we were looking at the eligible drug list.
Okay. Thanks. And yeah, I think, this is just something that's up for consideration. I think Doug has an interesting idea here of, some different ways we can look at this. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this to this board meeting was just because if we are going to make a change, I want us to have A, time to think about it, and then B, time to change our process. So when we're coming around for, like I was talking about, our timeline next summer, we can make those appropriate changes. But Doug, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to, so I think it's important to note that this change would only make a difference in pretty rare cases, because it would have to be a drug with multiple manufacturers. And so all of the drugs we chose this year for affordability review only have one manufacturer, and so it wouldn't make any difference for any of those. This is when we have eligibility for a generic, then there could be multiple manufacturers. But all these ones who have eligibility through the brand criteria are not going to have this. This isn't going to make a difference because they're only going to have one manufacturer. So it's a pretty rare distinction, but I think again, I like it because I think it gives us a strong sort of theoretical justification for the choices that we make when we rank the drugs in terms of how important we think they are for affordability review. And then the other thing I wanted to note was just that, like, so Ryan, when you were talking about when we display them on the dashboard, the level of granularity would be different. But at the affordability review stage, we would still get that level of granularity, right? Even if we did an affordability review for, in this proposed new system, we'd have, it'd be for multiple manufacturers of the one ingredient. We would then get the granularity at that stage to see, oh, well, maybe this manufacturer has a high price and this one has a low price. So we would see that then, right?
Correct. Yes, you would get that. It would just be at a kind of a different step in the process.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I would say I think that if we did have a drug that had multiple manufacturers, again, to collect the data, it's just that it's that much more work. So that it's like doing multiple drug reviews in one. And so I think we'd have to consider how many other drugs we would review if, depending on how many manufacturers and stuff we would be trying to coordinate with and gather data from. So something to keep in mind. Hung?
Oh, thanks, Mike. I concur with Doug. My question would be, when we're looking at the ingredient, we're also looking at the biosimilars. Is that correct? So it's not just the generic for that drug, because the biosimilars, the ingredient plus notations to show a biosimilar, right? But it's typically the same ingredient. Ryan, I was checking.
Sorry, I didn't catch the question. What was that about the biologics?
So when we're talking about looking at it as a whole, or just at the ingredient, we're not talking about the brand generic, but we're including the biosimilars to looking at it in Doug's point, that because as the biosimilars are coming out, right, you're diluting the brand and the generic usage.
I think you're right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
if there's the three criteria with which you can be eligible for affordability review. There's a criteria. There's one for brands, there's one for biosimilars, and one for generics. And this change would only apply to then how we rank the biosimilars and generics.
Correct.
Great. Daria, or I guess Hung first. Did any other questions? Or was that good?
Not right now, so
Okay,
I'm good.
great. Daria.
Thanks. Yeah, we will take this back to manufacturers and get their thoughts on that. But first, my high level initial thoughts just are that this proposal would definitely prioritize system costs, and I don't see any consideration in this or discussion yet on patient affordability costs and how this would affect that. If, you know, how this would look at that in this picture, if you did have a situation where you had a brand and a generic, or a biologic and a biosimilar, you know, one would presume that they have very different formulary. They're competing for formulary placement, and they could have very different patient out-of-pocket costs because of that competition. And so those differences might get blended, diluted in your data if you're combining those things. So encourage you to consider that as you advance this proposal.
Okay, Eileen.
Oh, my question just is, I assume this does not a statute change.
No, this wouldn't be a statute change. This is kind of a policy after we create the initial drug list of how we're going to go about selecting stuff. So
Let's check it.
great. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions from the board on that?
I guess I would just note in response to Daria, I think it does take into account patient out-of-pocket costs better when you aggregate to the ingredient level, just because then you're looking at total number of users. And we would also, when one of our criteria is out-of-pocket costs, or I guess out-of-pocket costs per user, but then the total number of users is going to, I think we're going to better capture that when we include all the manufacturers prior to this ranking. So I take your point that it's not going to have that granularity on the dashboard, but I think we'll see that better in our affordability reviews.
Great.
I can ask one other question real quick.
Oh, go for it, Greg.
So I guess if we have multiple labelers, and what if some of those don't meet the statutory requirements for being reviewed? We just not review those and review the others, and then in that sense, the upper payment limits would only apply to some of those products. Is that kind of how this would play out potentially?
Yes. Yeah, so that is correct. So we would do the review first and make sure that all of the drugs on the eligible drug list meet the statutory criteria in 7405030. And then once we have that list, then we can aggregate those ingredients together when creating that dashboard. So, to Eileen's question, we aren't changing any of the statute. We still are following all of the requirements in that. But then once we have that list created, we can present that list to you in a number of different ways. And so the proposal, on the table today is to change how you would see that data and that drug list. Now, the individual drug products, would still be there. And if you did want to see it at that granular level, you could. Just that when we are looking at the dashboard and presenting the different metrics to you, it would just be done at that drug ingredient level.
Gotcha. Okay, that's very helpful. Thanks.
So Greg, going back to that question, it's how is it going to apply? Is it if it's decided that the ingredient at the ingredient level that there is an upper limit, so that's needed, it's gonna apply to all the biosimilars, generic and brand that is associated with that. And then there must be a difference between all three on what that upper limit would be. Is that is that the intent at the end of the day?
So that's a good question, and I don't think that we've gotten to the upper payment limit methodology yet. I think that may be a question for when the board is setting forth, kind of that methodology for setting upper payment limits. And I don't know, Mike, others.
My guess
Is
is
there-
that it would have to be that the upper payment limit would only apply to eligible products. And so we still wouldn't, I mean, and again, I'm just guessing here, but so it wouldn't, if there was something that had that ingredient that, but didn't merit inclusion in the eligible products list, the upper payment limit would not apply to those NDCs. That's just sort of my first stab at it.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Yeah, and like I was mentioning before, we're going to start pulling together some data on upper payment limits based on what the other states have been doing here over the holiday and early winter. And so, yeah, I think we can start looking at these discussions of, since upper payment limits will be coming in 2027. So throughout 2026, what does this potentially look like? What do we think? And I think kind of timing wise, this, we're actually sitting in a good spot where there are upper payment limit questions being asked in the court currently. So we can kind of see what's going on with that as well to help inform us throughout the next year on things that we need to do. So yeah, so I think we still have a few questions around that stuff that we definitely need to iron out, but that's all good conversation. So with that, I think my initial goal today was just to have this discussion to get this idea out in front of us, and so we can think about it and mull it over here a little bit. And so if any board members have other questions or thoughts or concerns, again, I think there's some advantages in terms of being able to look at data a little bit different way, but it's not going to be, like a game changing applied to a ton of different things. So I think it'll be applicable in unique cases, or specific cases rather. So yeah, I think are there any other questions here before I kind of close this one out? Okay. So yeah, so board members, think about this. Advisory group members as well, especially think about this. If you have thoughts, ideas, questions, or concerns, chat with us here over the next couple of months, and then we can bring this back up here at our next board meeting, because this will take a little bit of work in terms of reconfiguring our dashboards and how we're looking at things. So that'll give us a couple of months for our data team to be able to do that once we decide on it. So that way, again, come summertime, as we're looking to select new drugs and do a new round of drug reviews, this can be ready for that. So great. On to our next thing. Oh, Marianne, you're on mute.
Thank you. Getting back used to this, So I want to thank Ryan. And it looks like we're ready to go on to Kelly's presentation.
Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is it just the presentation or you also see like notes?
I don't see your notes.
Okay, good.
They might be handy, but
Okay, so today I'm going to give a high-level overview of the affordability review data collection process and where we're at. And if you have any questions along the way, just feel free to stop me, and we'll also have time at the end for questions and discussion. So I'll be starting off with an overview of the affordability review process and where we are in the process. And then I'll go over the data sources we'll be using for our affordability review. And I'll also touch on available data and potential challenges. And then finally, I'll go over the next steps, and then we'll have time for Q&A and further discussion. So this chart has been in a lot of my past presentations showing where we are in the affordability review process. And at the last board meeting, we selected drugs for affordability review. So now we've finally moved on to the next part of the process, which is conducting the affordability review. And so in order to conduct affordability reviews, we need to collect data on the drugs that were chosen. So I'll start with this high-level overview of our data collection process, and then I'll go over in the next slides why we need to also pull data from the All Payers Claim Database, the APCD, as well as First Data Bank, or FDB, and Metaspan. But basically everybody we ask for data from, except manufacturers, are invited to submit data, but not required. So as our data collection process plays out, we are also concurrently pulling data from these 3 data sources to supplement the data we may or may not get from the optional data submitters. So the data collection process involves requesting data from data submitters, which are manufacturers, payers, wholesalers, and pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. Receiving that data, validating the data, which involves things like making sure the data is in the format we asked for example, NDC is 11 digits, and then as well as logic checks, like, are there more people who submitted claims than people that are part of the plan? And then the validation and receiving part may be iterative if we have questions or need clarifications or corrections from the data submitters. And then once the data is validated, we will process and clean the submitted data. So I'll explain more in the coming slides about what cleaning involves. And then after that, our data will be ready to ingest into our database, and then the data will be ready for analysis. So right now we have received data from payers and PBMs, and we're at the iterative phase of validation and going back and forth with going back to submitters with questions and requests for clarification. And I've also worked with Marina to pull supplemental data from these 3 data sources that I mentioned. And then right now I'm organizing that supplemental data into a format that Marina and other users can review. So as I just mentioned, in addition to requesting data, we're also pulling data from those 3 supplementary data sources. So I'll talk a little bit more about those. So as I mentioned before, only one data submitter, which is the manufacturers, is required by law to submit data, while the others are invited to participate. And then we'll also be pulling data from the APCD, FDB, and Metaspan to supplement the data we're requesting from the submitters, since we know we're not going to have 100% participation from the submitters that were invited to submit. So specifically, we'll be using the APCD data to supplement the payer, PBM, and wholesaler data, and we're also using it to supplement some drug price data. Sorry, APCD data. We'll be using the FDB and Metaspan to supplement drug price data, some of which is optional for manufacturers, like the wholesale acquisition cost, or WAC, and the national average drug acquisition cost, or NADAC. And yeah, we'll be trying to pull those from the FDB and Metaspan, and we'll also be using the FDB and Metaspan to validate the data that we receive. All right, and then with that, I'll go over the available data and potential challenges that we're facing. So based on the scope of the board's authority, the board can only require manufacturers to submit data. So while we invite the other submitters to submit data, we will not end up having complete data for those submitters. And since we can't get the exact same data we're asking for, we're going to pull from our supplemental data sources, as I mentioned, and there are some challenges that come with that. So the first challenge is the supplemental data sources that we're using does not contain certain data fields that we asked for from the data submitters invited to participate. Like for example, the APCD is not as granular as the data we are requesting from payers and PBMs. So for example, we're requesting plan level information. So like plan name, insurance premiums, out-of-pocket maximums, and that kind of thing. But the APCD does not collect that kind of information. They only collect like the market type that the plan is in. So like whether the plan is Medicare, Medicaid, or commercial. So then obviously we won't get any stuff on like what the insurance premium was or the out-of-pocket maximum. And so here is a more detailed table of examples of data that we are requesting from our data sources and then what we have. So like I just mentioned, we're requesting plan level data from the submitters, but the APCD only has market type data. We also, even though FDB and Metaspan has some pricing data like the WAC and NADAC that I mentioned, it does not have like average wholesale unit price, which we're asking from wholesalers, which we did not get any submissions from. But the FDB does have suggested wholesale price, so maybe that could be an alternative that we could use. And then in terms of data cleaning and potential challenges, so if we want to do any analysis on the data that we collect, and we want to, for example, pull all the data for a certain plan, we'll need to make sure that the data for this plan is actually all categorized under this plan. So like all the plans need to be spelled and formatted the same, which will involve data cleaning. So for example, this is not from real data we have collected, but for example, say Kaiser Permanente is entered as KP or just Kaiser instead of Kaiser Permanente. If this happens, then we need to correct these two to say Kaiser Permanente. So then when we pull the data by Kaiser Permanente, we also get these two cases. And then since this plan name is asked in many templates, this may involve a lot of cleaning depending on like how much how much corrections we need to do. And then we also plan on cleaning up the FDA indications data field so that we can pull the data by drug indication in the future. Oh, sorry, I forgot the second bullet. So another potential challenge we could face is technical difficulties in processing and ingesting data. So our IT team helped us set up a database for our data, but we have to upload the data ourselves because we don't have like a dedicated IT person like some other programs. And I've done some like test uploads just to confirm that things are working. But once we start uploading more data sets and bigger data sets, I don't know if there's going to be any issues or we may need to seek assistance from IT. And then another thing that I'll add that's not here because I created these slides a few weeks ago, are there some things that might come up in the data that's like that will happen like after I actually like clean up and do all that, because I'm not a subject matter expert like Ryan or Marina. And then once they look at the data, they may notice some things that I missed. Like I can check if there's like missing data or the number of people the claim is greater than number of people in the plan, but I don't have the subject matter knowledge to know, for example, like the quantity dispensed for the drug looks weird or the number of claims for the drug looks really low. So it's going to be a team effort to address and identify data issues. And then if that happens, then we could enter more back and forth with the data submitter for clarification and corrections. And since we're pulling data from the APCD, we're not going to, because we know that we're not going to get complete data submissions from every single payer, PBM, and wholesaler. We're going to analyze the data that we collect from the data submitters that did submit separately from the APCD data, instead of just like aggregating the APCD data at the market type level and combining it. This is also because the APCD data already contains data from those data submitters since they're required by law to submit. So this wouldn't be an accurate way to analyze data anyways, because we would end up double counting. Right, and so the next steps for us are to continue the process of validating submitted data, continue organizing the data from supplemental data sources, and then once the validation process is over, we'll move on to cleaning and processing data from payers and PBMs. And as Mike mentioned, we don't have any data from manufacturers yet. So once we get that data, we would start this process over for the manufacturer data. And this is my last slide. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions, or if you want me to go back to a certain slide, we can go over something again.
Thanks, Kelly. Any questions for Kelly? All right, thank you. That was a great presentation.
I have a
Oh,
question.
looks like I see it now.
You mentioned that there's not a requirement for PBM or insurers to provide data. Is there a way we can force the issue or change that they have to submit the data, or is that too late?
That would probably have to be done with the legislation. Because the legislation specifically cites manufacturers have to submit the data, and if not, we have the authority, the legislation to fine them for not, giving us the data. But yeah, for everyone else, that is not specified. So yeah, that would fit, and I kind of have a running list of items if we were to propose, agency sponsored legislation of ways that we could maybe tweak or improve things. And so we could potentially add that to the list, but yeah, it's currently not in there right now.
Right, any other questions for Kelly? Right, again, thank you. So go on to Simon.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks, everyone. So my section is fairly short, just opening up a bit of a discussion. So we gave a preview to the board members in our one-on-ones about this, but really as we're entering the affordability reviews, once we get to a stage where we have more data in and we're actually running the analyses on the drugs, one important piece of information will be feedback from the advisory group. And so what we'd like to do is discuss how, as board members, you'd like to receive information from the advisory group. Just as a reminder, we have the core advisory group, which sits over multiple drug reviews. And then we have supplemental advisory group, the newer members who have specific expertise in the drugs currently under review, Enbrel and Tandy. And so wanted to, one, open it up to the board to discuss it if you've thought about ways that you want to receive information or the format that you want to receive information from the advisory group. And if you don't have any specific ideas or goals, then we can kind of lay out our proposal and talk through that. Any thoughts, board members, just to start off? Oh, Doug.
Yeah, thanks. The first thing that comes to my mind is just that it would be helpful in the same way that we have our meeting agenda and a series of things that we need to decide on. I think it'd be, if we have a slide deck about whatever the eligible drug list, how we're, like we talked about with Ryan, the ranking thing. If the advisory boards sort of formatted their advice on those topics in line with the agenda, with the meeting agendas, I think that would be a helpful way to us sort of to compartmentalize each of their elements of advice for each of the decisions that we have to make. So maybe if they wanted like a slide deck related to each decision point, even like pre-vote and at vote, I think would be helpful.
That's helpful. Thanks, Doug. And we can help, the HCA staff can help the advisory group members, if they have their thoughts and they submit it to us, and we can help with preparing the slide deck so it doesn't fall on an advisory group member. Anyone else on the board thoughts? If not, I can just kind of present for the public what we're thinking, which is at the moment something along the lines of a report. Within the report, different sections based on the expertise of the different advisory group members. We would help collaboration with the board, come up with certain questions to pose to them. Then they would respond, filling out a page and a half or so with their thoughts on their specific area of expertise. And then, as Doug mentions, we can take the information from that, we can put it into a presentation and kind of share it with the board and share it with the public, just as part of the discussions. And as a next step, we can take a stab at drafting that and outline of this report, share it with the board, and post it online. And then kind of once we have approval from the board that these are the questions that you want to ask, we can send it out to the advisory group members.
I think that sounds pretty good. I was also thinking it might be helpful to have some of that info in the when we do the one-on-ones as well, just to kind of prepare us for the meetings.
Sounds good.
Anything else for Simon?
And I guess I would just say, you know, advisory group members, as well, if you have specific ways that you think you would want to participate or ways that you can help. I know I've had some individual conversations one-on-one with a number of people, and those have always been, you know, very enlightening to do. So always feel free, as we start getting this data here together more. Yeah, I think coming into the new year, there's going to be a lot more stuff for people to take a look at and give initial impressions on what we're doing and how we can format, especially this first drug review as we're moving forward as well. So, yeah.
Sounds good. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, this was going to be a pretty short and sweet meeting, which is why we opted to go for the you know, all online version here. So,
Any so time for public comment?
or Hung, yeah, quick question.
I'm sorry, sorry, it took me a while to get to that. Mike, can you kind of look into what Iowa might affect any of this, or kind of summarize when you get a chance to look into it as we get into 2026? I know there's a lot going on. And I think you mentioned in Colorado, they were looking to the 3 or 4 drugs that's going to be affected. I think there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of confusion. And so it'll be interesting to see how our work and it's going to affect vice versa, the Iowa affecting our work.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few. Well, so we just had some NASHP meetings as well as just kind of our weekly interstate, you know, directors meetings. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening from a national policy perspective. And exactly what that all means, I don't think anybody knows for sure. But yeah, there's a number of things that we're trying to kind of keep our eye on and see, what, you know, with tariffs and all, you know, Trump RX and all these other things coming out, you know, what is this all gonna look like? So yeah, I don't think we have a ton of answers yet on a number of things, but yeah, there's a few things that definitely could be affecting us as we move into the future. So
just like my initial thoughts. I mean, this is gonna affect the Medicare Part D programs, right? For some of the drugs that, like Stelara and Enbrel, it's already on there. It's not gonna apply to the commercial plan. So from the state perspective, from us, we can put this in to try to influence the commercial market. Whereas, right, that's not applying to the Medicare market. And if a lot of companies follow suit with Medicare, which is the case for a lot of things, then it makes us looking at those drugs mute, right? Then we can select something else to work on. So, I mean, that's just some of my initial thoughts as we are approaching end of the year and all of this is coming up. But that's
Yeah.
some of the questions.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Hung. Yeah, no, I think that's very great. Good question to consider.
And maybe that's a question or something that we could talk a little more about in the March meeting. To have more information at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Doesn't. All right. No other comments, questions? All right, well, you said it was going to be a short meeting.
Yeah, Simon, did we have anyone on the public comment?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
There were 2 folks at least who emailed and so they wanted to speak. And so if you raise your hand, I can unmute you and allow you to speak.
It looks like, is it Tiffany? I see one hand raised.
All right, Tiffany, I think I've made it so you can speak. Give it a shot.
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the board for all that you're doing to help address affordability for the people who live in Washington. It's a very important initiative for you to do. My name is Tiffany Westridge Robertson. I'm the founder of Ensuring Access Through Collaborative Health, which is a national coalition of patient organizations and allied groups addressing drug affordability policies that benefit patients first. And we have a novel Patient Inclusion Council, or the PIC, which was designed specifically because of the new era of patient engagement, where we need more diverse voices to come to the table. I am also a patient living with axial spondyloarthritis, and that is treated by Enbrel and Humira, 2 of the drugs under your review. I just wanted to take the opportunity first, because there are so many PDABs with different things that they focus on and that were also cited today, to remind the Washington PDAB that unlike some others like Maryland or Oregon, for example, your task is to make sure that the prescription drug is viewed as affordable or unaffordable to Washington consumers, not to the healthcare system or to the state. That is really important as you move forward, in particular because Maryland, for example, ruled Trulicity and Ozempic considering unaffordable just earlier this week. However, they did not rule it unaffordable for patients. That's the one criteria that was not deemed unaffordable. Matter in fact, 90% of the patient reports from the manufacturer showed that they pay $0 to $50 because of copay. So I just want to make sure that while you're reviewing these, that you're remembering that the unaffordability needs to be patient-centric. Second, I did want to just point out respectfully that not everybody's excited about the Colorado Enbrel UPL. So in particular, any patient with a diagnosis that is treated by Enbrel, but who's on any of the therapeutic alternatives, Symphony, Humira, Cimzia, Remicade, any of the biosimilars, not so much excited, because if the UPL does end up working, meaning the PBM decides it will make enough profit to keep it on the preferred lowest cost option, that means every other patient that's on a healthcare plan that puts Enbrel as the preferred drug will get non-medically switched to it. And it is very hard for autoimmune patients to find the therapies that work. We don't want to be non-medically switched. So that is a very real unintended consequence that happens from the UPL. And Colorado did acknowledge that that would happen. And their solution was they did advise our patient advocacy groups to go now and lobby for non-medical switching legislature to try to combat that unintended consequence, which frankly, we don't have the person power to be able to do that. And I'm also happy to talk about this with anybody here or afterwards if you wanted more information. And then just lastly, again, I appreciate all that you're doing. We appreciate all that you are doing, especially by asking more patients to be on extended stakeholder councils. It's so vital to get the patient voice. And I do think that Washington PDAB is stepping up and showing you do truly care about patient affordability. We're here to help you in any way you can. We are here to advocate with you, for you, and help you to achieve these goals. Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. It's really very helpful. Mike, anything else from your side?
I think we have one more person,
Is there
Simon.
another?
Yep, Primo Castro, I just allowed your mic, so try unmuting and speak.
Great, thank you very much. Hopefully everybody's able to hear me. Just like others, I've had also issues, from switching the other platforms. But so my name is Primo Castro, State Government Affairs for the Western Region for the Biotechnology Innovation Organization. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. BIO has consistently raised concerns about the premise behind establishing a drug review process. We believe this approach is fundamentally flawed and risks creating unintended consequences for patients and the broader ecosystem. The current data submission process overburdens manufacturers, while payers, PBMs, and others are not mandated, but rather invited to participate. This process is duplicative of existing state and federal reporting requirements and imposes unnecessary administrative costs without clear evidence that these reviews improve affordability. Continuing affordability reviews will not achieve the intended goals and may harm patients in the long run. We urge the board to suspend further reviews and instead focus on collaborative solutions that strengthen existing affordability programs and promote transparency without jeopardizing innovation or patient care. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, anything else? Don't see any others. Simon, anyone else?
I'm not seeing anyone else.
Okay. Mike, any last closing comments?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out and appreciate the board member and advisory group member for your time. And Marianne, we're super happy to have you back on the team here. And we'll have a little bit of a break, but come spring, I think there's going to be a whole lot of good stuff to do. So again, if anyone has questions, always feel free to reach out and we'll keep on keeping on.
Any final comments from board members? Eileen, it looks like you're saying want to say something.
I said happy holidays.
Oh, happy holidays. We can barely hear you. Yes, happy holidays. Look forward to seeing you in March. But feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions or concerns.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.